Logarithm's Netmon Freemium delivers real-time network visibility to quickly identify emerging threats in your IT environment. Netmon Freemium is a free commercial-grade network forensics and traffic analytics solution. You can use Netmon Freemium's powerful capabilities to search against all of observed network traffic, identify abnormal traffic patterns in application usage, and quickly analyze full packet captures. Take the first step towards real-time network visibility. Visit logarithm.com/freemium to learn more and download it today. Waterfall Security Solutions, the market leader in unidirectional gateway technology. Their industrial cybersecurity technology protects critical infrastructures and control systems from remote online cyber attacks. It's installed around the world, including nuclear plants in the US and electric grids. Their unidirectional security gateway creates an impassable physical barrier preventing communications from flowing into the industrial control network, enabling safe and secure IT and OT integration, remote monitoring, and cloud services. Visit go.waterfallsecurity.com/enterprise security. The first 100 listeners who register will receive a free copy of SCADA Security, What's Broken and How to Fix It, written by Waterfall's VP of Industrial Security, Andrew Ginter. Signal Sciences is the industry's first web protection platform that works in any cloud, any container, any platform as a service, and any modern application architecture. The Signal Sciences web protection platform can be deployed in next-generation WAF, RASP, or reverse proxy modes, giving customers ultimate flexibility and coverage. Protect your web applications with Signal Sciences web protection platform. Signal Sciences, securing code and connecting teams. For more information, check them out at signalsciences.com/ESW.
Welcome back, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly. I want to welcome our new sponsors, both Waterfall Security and Signal Sciences. Very, very cool technology, as do all of our sponsors that support the shows. But those are our two new ones. So look forward to interviewing them and getting more information out to our listeners on those two things. Super cool technologies. So. Cyber insurance. Yay. I always thought it was like, well, yeah, that's a cop-out, right? Okay, end story.
Yeah. That's
Move on. Apparently, I think I said before, there's more to it than that.
Yeah, there's a little bit more to it. Look, here's where it all starts, and this is something that's always driven me nuts, is that we say this word insurance, and we have completely bastardized it, but it's at its fundamental level, insurance, in any capacity, is you're basically pooling risk together. So what you're trying to do is to protect yourself against something that is low probability but a high impact. So like a hurricane wiping out your house or something to that effect. That's classic insurance, and it's a great way to it's a risk transfer mechanism. You're basically taking your very narrow risk and you're transferring it out across a bigger pool on the bet that no single group in the pool is going to have the same thing happen to them at the same time. So then the people who manage that make money on it, and then the people who need it, they've paid into it, and then they get some support out of it. That's the basics of insurance. And then we start to apply it to the world of cyber and security.
Gotcha. No, that's a good explanation. So, I mean, what's the value for a company to do cyber insurance? I mean, can it help in those cases, and can it help your overall security strategy? Does it strengthen your posture and security?
I'll tell you what. There's a couple interesting answers to that. The short answer is yes, and here's some of the reason why. And this may sound somewhat contradictory. So let me just say, some of what I'm going to say deals with classic insurance, not so much health insurance. But one of the things that happens with a classic insurance is that you have actuarial tables. So they go in, they look at stuff. They are fantastic at getting data and understanding what does and doesn't work. So one of the things that's happened, especially with the cyber insurance underwriters very early on, is they've been able to say, by the way, if you have a breach, if there's an incident, if there's a problem, call us. And we're going to help you mitigate that. It's in their best interest, right? Because it means it's a lower claim, if any, that they have to pay. But it's also getting them some hands-on experience and helping guide you through whatever it is. And we're still seeing that as a benefit of the premiums in a lot of cases. So yeah, absolutely. The other thing is, some of these breaches, I mean, for all we know, we don't know. I mean, I don't know if I'm leading the charge, but I'm definitely pretty clear that a breach is a symptom. It's only a symptom. Now, people always go, symptom of what? Well, I mean, look, it could be that you made bad decisions. But here's where cyber insurance is going to start to come in. There's this concept. It's not a new concept, but it's called reasonableness. It's a legal concept. We're starting to see it apply to security now. So what that means is, is what you did reasonable relative to somebody else just like you, right? And that's always the tough part in reasonableness. So if you're a huge company with a big budget, cool. Then what are other huge companies just like yours with a big budget doing? And are you doing the same things that they're doing? By the way, if you're not, that's okay, but why? What makes you different or special? Is it a neglect thing? Do you know what the industry is doing? Do you know how those things are working? So again, the insurance is going to start to play here because that's going to guide you on some of those things because they're actively involved across the industry. But at the same time then, what you're going to start finding is other reasonable people in your industry, in an organization of your size, are in fact getting some sort of a cyber insurance premium or a policy. And as a result of that, that becomes the reasonable course of action for it.
Michael,
the last part to it is...
I have a question just up into that point, right? Like, where are the lines where you're making a decision that, like, we're not going to do something and instead we're going to have an insurance policy for that? Because it's such a rare use case, right? I can see that maybe factoring into this discussion.
Well, those lines are starting to go away simply because insurance companies have a lot of riders. And basically, if you want to get cyber liability insurance or breach insurance or even an umbrella insurance policy, you now have to fill out a lot of forms. We fill out a ton of these forms for our insurance. I think we're up to like $10 million for anything that we do. But we have to fill out documentation that says that we do vulnerability assessment scanning on a monthly basis. We have to say that we use encryption for data at rest and data at transit. We need to, and it's not just general things like, do you run AV? No, we got to actually fill out a lot of detail for the insurance company that we have. And what's interesting for me is I'm starting to see a lot of companies that are coming to us and are like, we need a pen test because our insurance policy tells us that we need to have a pen test. So I think insurance is going to move the dial in computer security far further than HIPAA or PCI or anything. So I think it's going to be a good thing in the long run.
I have been saying this for like 15 years now, and the timing wasn't right, and I've been consistent on it. And John, as you were explaining, that's exactly what happens. So when you look at it, right, maybe even 10 years ago, if you tried to get a cyber policy, with the exception of Lloyd's of London, that'll write you a policy for anything, there wasn't an option. Or let me rephrase that. That's not true, and I know a couple of the ones that did it are going to be really pissed at me right now. Okay, you had a limited set of options, but your coverage was limited, and there wasn't a ton that you could be able to do with it. Okay, so what's changed now? Well, everybody's writing for it. So that means a lot of people got burned. Once they get burned, they go, okay, hold on, that's not going to work for us. Let's go figure out what this needs to be. And so they start with easy questions. Do you have a policy? Do you have a firewall, right? But then what they've realized is those questions don't give them any detail. So now they're asking better questions. So let's go back to the story we talked about in the news. The board's going to start asking for proof. Okay, you got a budget. Are you actually improving our security posture? Are you actually protecting what matters? Well, whatever you're going to put in insurance, they're going to do it. John, have you seen yet where they're actually coming out and verifying it? Or let me ask you differently. How are they verifying that? Right now, are they just taking you at your word?
Yep, pretty much. They take us at our word. However, for our two insurance companies that we work through, because we have to have two different policies for different things, we have to actually provide all of the policies for BHIS. We have to actually submit those in and have them reviewed. And they have somebody that goes through it, reviews, and says, yep, this looks good. And they are actually reviewing it. They're not just looking at the title of the docs and moving on. They're actually looking at it, make sure it complies with best practices. Or they're at least looking at those policies. But what's more interesting is, for me, is I have heard of a couple of organizations, smaller credit unions, that have been breached, didn't do the due diligence that they were supposed to. And whenever they go to their insurance company saying, hey, we just got hit for a couple of $1 million, we'd like to call in our insurance policy, the insurance company is basically saying, great, I want to see your last pen test report. I would like to see your last IDS alerts or your incident response reports. And if they don't have those, the insurance company is basically saying, tough, we're not going to pay this out.
Yeah, and they'll win every time. Here's the thing then. So people always ask me, they say, well, what should I ask? That's the question to ask. If you're in security today and you're in the enterprise, there's things you can do. Maybe we'll get time to talk about it today. But if there's only one question you need to ask, it is this. How will we defend our choices? How will we prove to you, the insurance company, when we file a claim that we've done what we said we've done what you've asked us to do? You need to know that going into it, because if you wait until you got popped and then you went in and tried to make a claim, because, just hoping it all works out, Good luck. That's and by the way, it's I've been on both sides of this. I don't think insurance companies are out to screw people. I don't. But I do think a lot of people try to abuse insurance companies, and so they've had to develop really tight controls, and they don't want to be abused. I mean, they're in the business of helping you in a time of crisis, but they're also really fundamentally in the business of making money. I'm a capitalist. I like it. I think it's a great system, but that's why they put some of these screws down. The more you know going into it, the more questions you ask up front, the better off you're going to be. Now, here's the interesting wrinkle. Most enterprises, the person who does the insurance is not a security person, even if they're doing cyber insurance. And I think that's where we have opportunities.
What about the kind of flip side to this, right? Like what kind of insurance are or should enterprises expect of vendors, whether that's a professional services or whether that's a software vendor? Like, what about the other? Can you, as an enterprise, require insurance from other people as well? That's kind of like the opposite.
I think John is living proof. The answer is yes.
Yeah.
And that the
John always has. But we had this conversation so many years ago too.
Well, and also the other thing that we're seeing, and we have to have a whole show dedicated to this, is basically vendor supply chain security. There's a bunch of companies out there, Security Scorecard, BitSite, that allow you to look into trying to develop some type of metrics between a computer security of an organization versus what we can enumerate from them without actually scanning them. And insurance is one of those things. And there are a number of our customers that say, before we'll do any work with you, we want to see your insurance policies. And that's not uncommon. It's actually it happens on almost a weekly basis. It's just part of doing business for what we do now.
Yep. Now, I'm going to point out something interesting, too. Not only do we have those companies looking at the security health of organizations, I've started taking some briefings, and these should start rolling out in the next couple of weeks. There are companies that look at financial health of organizations, and they have ways to look at financial health of non-publicly traded organizations as well. And I said to them, sometimes I'm not as quick on the uptake as I'd like to be. And I said, how does this play with security? And they said, if you're not well capitalized or you don't have the money, you can't afford the insurance. They won't give you insurance, was one of their leads. And they also said, so what controls are you putting in place? Are you maintaining those controls? When you're broke, you're going to cut corners. I went, oh, that's really kind of fascinating. So that plays into the whole third-party risk. I'm looking at the way the insurance companies are evaluating their policyholders, very similar to the way that we're struggling through trying to understand third-party risk. And I'm pretty confident those two are going to merge up at some point and be a real big benefit. And all I can keep thinking about too is Progressive in particular. They've got that snapshot now. So if you're willing to let them plug that into your OBD2 port and pay attention to all your driving habits, they'll calibrate your actual risk. And they always tout that will save you money. Looking at the way a lot of people drive, I'd be shocked what the actual savings are. But so the reason I was asking John about how often he sees the insurance companies actually performing the diligence, I think we're going to see that, right? So even though I don't want to cross into healthcare, if you've gotten a life insurance policy and it's at a certain level, or you're young enough and you're getting a certain level, they send someone to your house. They run an EKG strip, they draw blood, they do height, weight, and other measurements, and they ask you some pretty interesting questions about your lifestyle because they're trying to get a more accurate understanding of whether you're insurable or not, what your premium is or not, and then they check up on you to kind of make sure that you're maintaining your end of the bargain.
That's why I smoke fake cigars here on the show
all the time. All the time, fake cigars.
Totally fake. It's just for show.
So I think we're gonna. Now, I could be wrong. I think we're going to start to see some of that from an insurance perspective. But, I could be wrong. Like, that might just be higher level premiums, or that might be, if you want a faster pay, like it might just be a service offering or some sort of an add-on. But no, we're definitely we see people asking the questions. Now, John, I'm curious this too. A decade ago, if you tried to get, like, let's say E&O insurance, errors and omissions insurance, and you said, I do security, there was like a pause at the end of the phone. And it was, I don't think we can write for that.
Well, that pause was usually 10 years ago. John, correct me if I'm wrong, like a dial tone.
Yeah, pretty much. And the type of insurance that we got was errors and omissions, and they had nice little drop-down boxes or little circles that I could fill in, bubbles. And it would be a computer consultant, and I would just check that, and then I would move on. Yep. And I was underneath that. I think, honestly, if I would have told the insurance companies, they asked, what are you doing? It's like, well, companies are going to hire me to break into their networks. Right. 10 years ago, there's no way they would have insured me.
No, and I think
or-
too, it depends on the amount. Like those little boxes that John and I were checking were, and John, like 10 or 15 years ago, we were required maybe sometimes like $1 million of E&O. And that, you could probably fill out a form and just say I'm a consultant, and the insurance company be like, that's cool. But then as you grow and get bigger and you deal with bigger companies, they're like, well, you need 2 million, you need 3 million, you need 5 million, you need 10 million. And then those little boxes, are a visit from a person and asking you questions, and it's a more involved process.
Well, and there's sometimes that we test customers and they say that they want us to have a specific rider.
Yeah.
And with most insurance companies, you can go right in and you can just you can print it out with a rider on, and it specifically calls out the customer. But over a certain amount, our insurance company starts to freak. And whenever we go to our insurance company and say, look, we need 15 million for this specific engagement, the insurance company asks 2 questions. The first question they ask is, what? The second question they ask is, what are you doing that's worth that much money? Mm-hmm. And a lot of customers can't answer that question. They just came up with some kind of magic number, and even though we're testing like a web server that if it goes down they may lose a few $1,000s tops, but they like those big numbers, and the insurance company says that insurance policy exceeds the entire value of the small little like online sales company. There's no way we're going to do an insurance policy for that, and that's justified. I actually like working with insurance companies more than I like working with a lot of other companies, because they come from an actuary background. Bingo. Reality is what matters, and so far it's been really, really good working with them.
Yeah, and that's what I said. Like, people give it a bad rap, or everybody's got their story of how I got one over on the insurance company and they paid for this and this and this. Business insurance is different than consumer level insurance. Yeah. And what I found is most business level insurance people are pretty competent and they're interested in getting going. In fact, when our RV was broken into and everything was stolen, half of my claim was a business claim, half of my claim was a personal claim. Personal claim made me weep for insurance and just hate the whole industry. But the business stuff resolved quick, helped out, got me right back on track, was solid, and they were great to work with. I was thoroughly impressed with it. And I find that's exactly, so, John, you already said it, this is what's going to move the needle forward in security. Because guess what? They're going to ask the questions that need to be asked, because money's on the line. And they're going to go ask the question of the CFO. They're going to go ask the question of the CEO and the COO and the board. And when they don't have those answers, they're going to go get those answers. So if you want to advance yourself in the enterprise, start thinking that way. You can fight it, and that's fine. By the way, you might have ways to improve it. That's welcomed. But be conversant in that and think about, okay, how would I demonstrate that? How would I explain that? How are they going to try to prove it? And if you can get into those conversations now, even if it's just to listen and learn, then when they come and they knock on your door and they say, hey, get this thing for the insurance company, yeah, you're good. You're ready. You're able to do it. And I think you're going to see a real big difference. By the way, do you guys know the top 2 claims last year for business level insurance related to cyber?
No.
You want to take a guess?
No.
Ransomware?
It surprised me too. This was, now, to be fair, I guess this is probably 2015 numbers. I was in a meeting with one of the regional heads of insurance, and he said the top 2 claims are lost laptops and insider theft of information. Employee leaves company and steals information, takes information with them. Those are right now.
A lot of the products that are out there do very poorly at protecting against those 2 types of things.
Isn't that fascinating? So I thought that was kind of interesting, and that's where we go. Now, here's the other part. A lot of people look at it and they go, well, where's the law? There isn't much, and there's for a good reason. Most people, even when they file their motions, every time these come up, I always jump on them, and I always want to see, like, well, what are they claiming? What are they claiming is the harm? Who is in breach and why? And how's that going to work? And what are we going to do with it? And then I haven't seen one go to actual court yet. They've all been resolved out, mediated out, resolved out, arbitrated out, or just settled out, because it's not in anybody's best interest, as this is still Wild West and everybody's trying to figure it out. They don't really want a lot of settled cases on this yet. So keep that in mind. I think that's a good thing. I've got another article coming out with Sean Tuma later today or tomorrow, looking at this case in Florida, totally unrelated, but looking at compelling passwords. And everybody looked at it and said, well, that court got it wrong. I'll show everybody why the court might have actually gotten it right. And it's kind of interesting. The footnote to it is sometimes these things take time to evolve. That's not a bad thing. If we get involved with it, we can up-level the conversations, we can draw better connections to it, and we can better understand the impacts of it, and we can act on it in a better way. That's usually how I look at these types of things.
Awesome. Closing thoughts on cyber insurance.
Get it.
Yeah, I would say if you're in the enterprise, my closing thought on it is go work with somebody who knows it better, because really what you're doing is, especially when you're trying to size your policy for the first time, there's all sorts of different things you can get that you may or may not need. And so that means you actually have to understand the risk in your organization. What risks are you actually facing that you feel confident you can mitigate against, and which ones are you worried about your potential exposure on? Can you get coverage that matches that? And then if you think about it, you're bringing together somebody who's an insurance professional, perhaps in your organization, somebody who's an insurance professional outside of your organization, either a broker or the underwriter themselves, and then hopefully you have a role in that process. If not, but that's a really interesting challenge, and there's a bunch of different jargons and lingos that happen in that, and you need a way to bring all that together. So I would say if you do that, think of it very much as a team-based approach, and that you're part of the team, not the whole team, and or get someone that can help you with it.
Awesome. John and Michael, thank you very much for coming on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. Thanks everyone for listening and watching. We'll see everyone next week.